Sometimes everything seems familiar. You live as always, stand up, move, talk, you do what you have to. But then something barely noticeable happens inside. Not an explosion, not a disaster, and a quiet break that only you can hear. An ordinary day suddenly becomes the second. A strange depth appears in familiar things, and as if a presence rises from within which cannot be ignored. You feel that you are no longer alone. This is not an external enemy and not imagination. It's a part of you that you've been with for too long, tried not to notice. She does not shout, just standing in the dark waiting for you to finally stop turning away. Jung said, "What we displace does not disappear. It is waiting for its time, and this time is coming." You suddenly understand. All your life you ran away from people but of its own depth. At first you try to pretend that nothing is happening. You load yourself with things, communication, noise so as not to be alone with inner silence. But the more you distract yourself, the more persistent it becomes that rises from within. This is not evil or destruction. This is something that once had to be hidden to survive children's vulnerability. Unspeakable anger and shame that wasn't yours, desires that were called wrong. All this has not disappeared. It just waited a long time for the moment when you're old enough to bear the truth about myself. And now this meeting is inevitable. You feel a strange tension, as if there are two people inside. One is the one you are used to being polite, convenient, controlling, and the second is the one who no longer agrees to remain silent. Jung wrote that the shadow becomes a monster only when a person continues to pretend that she is not there. And the most frightening, not that something dark is rising inside and the fact that you can no longer live in the old way. The most natural reaction is try again, lock what's up inside. You say yourself, "I have to pull myself together, it's just tiredness, nothing is happening to me," and for a while it seems that it works. You return to your usual life, hold your face, you fulfill obligations, but the price turns out to be too high. The stronger a person presses on the shadow, the more it grows. What could be heard in a whisper starts knocking from the inside. First, irritation for no reason. Then, sudden outbursts of anger which frighten the person himself. Then, apathy. When you want, they just disappear and don't talk to anyone. This is how the shadow reminds himself not to destroy, and because of ignoring becomes unbearable for the psyche. Jung wrote that it is not the content of the unconscious that becomes dangerous and our attitude towards him. The shadow turns into a monster only then when a person continues to pretend that he has no wounded places, no pain, no darkness, no real feelings. Sometimes the worst thing is it's not something that rises inside and what we still believe. If I admit it, I will cease to be worthy, but the truth is another, the flip side of suppression, loss of self. There is a moment that cannot be calculated in advance. He does not come by force of will and not out of another demand to get a hold of yourself. He appears then when inside there is no more room for war. A person suddenly gets tired not of life but of self-defense, and instead of the usual resistance there is silence, not a victory and not defeat, and something third, readiness to hear. At this moment the shadow stops pressing. She does not attack and does not require anything. She just shows that was hidden too long, the pain that no one had to share, anger that could not be expressed, fear for which they were ashamed, desires that have been declared dangerous. And suddenly it becomes clear. What you've been afraid of all your life, not trying to destroy you, oh no, is trying to get you back. Jung said, a meeting with the shadow is a test, but it opens the way to integrity. You understand that there is no monster inside and the part of you that just they were not allowed to live for too long. And for the first time in a long time, voltage disappears. Not because the problems disappeared and because you stopped to be one's own enemy. Gradually you notice a strange thing. The less struggle inside, the more energy appears. Don't splash, not euphoria and quiet, steady strength which used to go to resistance. What seemed dark begins to change shape. Out of suppressed anger, the ability to protect their borders is born. From shame, honesty with oneself. Out of fear comes attentiveness and depth. Out of pain, compassion for others, not self-destruction. What you considered a weakness, it turns out to be a part of your wholeness. Jung wrote that a person becomes real not when he gets rid of his shadow and when it stops living halfway. And suddenly you understand. You don't try to be comfortable anymore, but you remain kind. You don't control everything around you, but you become more stable. You don't hide your emotions, but you stop living by them. The shadow does not disappear. She takes her place. And instead of an internal enemy, support appears. You start saying, I am not, as a statement, but as a fact, and the most amazing thing, life does not become perfect. She simply ceases to be someone else's. Sometimes it seems to us that salvation is to become stronger, harder, callous, and finally stop experiencing what makes us vulnerable. But the truth is in another. We are not healed when we conquer our shadow and when we stop considering her as an enemy. A shadow is not a dark hole inside a person. This is everything that once had to be hidden to stay accepted, beloved, to survive, and a meeting with her does not change peace and how a person lives inside himself. You stop wasting energy on masks, for constant control, on attempts to be correct. And the energy that went into the fight returns there where she was always needed, into your life. Jung wrote, a person does not need to be perfect. He needs to be whole, and perhaps this is the most important. You do not become the second, you stop being half. If this path answered you, so you have already started moving inwards. Take your time. Do not demand results from yourself. Just keep being honest with yourself, and one day you will notice the inner darkness was never empty. She was the door. If you listen to the end, write in the comments, I'm here. Let's see how many of us are on this path. Support the channel by liking and subscribing to see new videos. Thanks for viewing.